everyone. So we're welcoming you tonight to the Influence Women's webinar. Hi, I'm Kathleen Cook. I'm the founder of Influence Women, and we're so thrilled to have you with us tonight for this amazing evening that you are going to learn so much about. We have two fantastic speakers with us tonight, Kathy Holliman and Tamara Khalaf. And I know that they are going to inspire you and give you some great things to think about. You know, one of the purposes of Influence Women is to help you think. It's to help you grow and to mentor you, not only in your technical skills, in your career skills, but in your life, whether it would be from a health and wellness point of view, mental health point of view, or just helping you through thinking about who you are, your identity, and how you fit in the industry, and how you can maneuver and navigate in the industry more successfully. So we're excited to bring you the Life Wheel tonight. It's an exciting new way of actually seeing for yourself areas in which you can grow and improve and become more successful in your career. We know that there are a lot of things that can hold us back in our career, and we want you to be successful. Let me tell you about Tamara Khalaf. She has had 27 years experiences. It's 27 years at the Walt Disney Studio as a designer in art direction. Tamara draws upon her experience in storytelling, design, and spirituality to bring a fresh perspective in coaching. Her goal is to help you understand your narrative in your life and worldview, and rewrite the story you tell yourself and others about who you are in the world. Her belief: change your story, change your life. You can find out more about Tamara on her IMDb page at Tamara Khalaf. And then our second presenter, who coaches alongside Tamara, is Kathy Holliman. Kathy is a certified life coach with a master's degree in human development with over 30 years experience as a behavior specialist. Her mission is to assist people with exploring mindset, setting intentions, and taking steps to help them live a transformed life. She'll help you find the life you want through a process of clarification, integration, and evolution that she terms equilibrium coaching. You can find out more about Kathy at equilibriumcoaching.us. So I am so excited to have both of our presenters here tonight, and we're going to bring them on now. Kathy and Tamara, welcome. Please come on and we welcome you to Influence Women's webinar tonight in the Life Wheel. Thanks for being with us.
Our pleasure.
Yeah. Kathy, you know, we read your bio, but tell us a little bit more about yourself. Why are you so passionate to help women transform their lives?
There is nothing better in life than a front row seat to transformation. That's one thing I completely believe. And I think so often as women, we can get pulled in so many different directions. And we get so many messages from our family, from our friends, from society, from our careers about who we're supposed to be. And often we can actually lose who we are truly made to be, and we can forget who and whose we are. And so I love being able to create a space for women to really be able to go inside and remember who they are, tap into their own inner wisdom and inner knowing, and live a life that thrives regardless of their circumstances. Because one thing we know is we can thrive no matter what's happening on the outside. And I just think that coming alongside women and helping them be able to embrace life that way and move through life with clarity and balance and joy, nothing brings me more joy than that. So
I love it. And I love joy. You know, I've often said that God promises us joy, and the world promise, which is eternal, but the world promises often happiness, which is just temporary. Right. And so I love that you bring in joy, because it brings in God's wisdom and purposes for our lives as well. So that's so important. Tamara, you work at Disney Studios and a very important role within the Disney Library in the animation department. You know and been around and seen and heard a lot of Walt Disney's wisdom. How has that affected your ability to coach other women? How has he affected maybe some of the things he's taught you in the wisdom that you've learned about him that you could pass on to us tonight? Maybe one small thing. And tell us a little bit maybe too about your job, especially there at Disney.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Kathleen. I work in a department called the Animation Research Library, and we are embedded within the animation studio where we house all of the animation artwork from when the company started 100 years ago. So we are the oldest part of the Walt Disney Company, and we are celebrating 100 years this year.
Wow.
The department that I work in, we have we believe about 65 million assets, tangible assets, and untold millions digital assets. And the rest of the company will come to us to access that for various projects. So a lot of the work that my team does, we deal with theme parks and hotels, resorts, cruise ships. We also have a traveling art exhibition. In fact, we have one in our backyard, which is quite rare for us. For those that are local to the LA area, we have an exhibit at the Huntington Library and Gardens right now, which will close in March. And you can see some of the original artwork from our collection. To answer your other question, there really has been, in my time, I've been with the company for 27 years. There's a lot of wisdom that Walt passed down, and unfortunately, I did not have the pleasure of meeting him. But I think one of the quotes that I had read that he had talked about, and just the video footage that I have seen of him over the years, is his childlike curiosity. He approached situations and problems and people with a great deal of imagination and curiosity, and didn't make any assumptions. And that's something that I know for me, I have been trying to learn. Ted Lasso has most recently picked up that motif on curiosity. And
yes.
it's something that I now value and cherish.
Yes, and curiosity has been one of my resonating words too in the last few months as well. I think that sometimes as an adult, we forget that we need to be curious, and that one of the things I love about when Jesus walked the earth was the fact that he was curious, and he made us curious about who he was and what he was doing on earth, and what his miracles and his stories were very curious stories. He made us think, and I think there's just there's such power in that, and I love that. That's so great. And 65. How many? 65 million?
Yeah, we believe we have not digitized everything in our collection, but as much as we can forecast out, we believe we have about 65 million works on paper and various substrates.
That's just mind-boggling. I have no idea how you can keep track of any of that.
That's not my job, thankfully.
I know. So let's get on though with the life wheel. This has been a wonderful tool for me, and I've been so pleased to have you walk me through this in our preparation for this. But take us through that, Tamara. I know you have some slides there, and how does this life wheel work?
Great. Well, as Kathy had mentioned in our video segment, this is a working workshop. So I'm going to share my screen, but if you haven't already, please grab a piece of paper. If you were able to print out the life wheel, please grab that because we will be using it. And without further ado, great. So I'm going to jump right in here. The life wheel came about, we believe it's been credited to a gentleman by the name of Paul Meyer. And he allegedly developed this tool in the 1960s as a way to help people realize their goals. While the wheel today has many different names, it's possible that if you have done any research in the area, you've heard it referenced as a life balance wheel, or a coaching wheel, or a wheel of success. Really, the foundation, the common purpose of each of these is really transformation, exactly what Kathy's passion is. It's a practical and flexible tool for people to assess their needs and to set goals and align them with their core values. And we have found in working with people and in our own reading and just living of life that by setting and achieving goals, it will help you to be intentional and focused. And when you're intentional and focused about areas of your life and you start to see progress, that leads to greater moments of satisfaction and fulfillment, which is why we are doing this. The beauty of the wheel is really in its simplicity. And as Kathleen said in the opening, we are interested in the whole individual. We are interested in who we are holistically, which is why this, for me, is one of my favorite exercises. So you'll see that we've broken it down into 8 wedge-shaped categories. And we picked these categories with Kathleen because they happen to align with workshops and events and just the heart of who Influence Women is. So we felt this was very appropriate for us for our categories today. What the life wheel does is provide a quick overall snapshot of your life. And then once you fill it out, which we will be showing you how to do momentarily, then you'll go into sort of a review and assessment stage. Kathy, I'm going to kick it off to you just in terms of the purpose behind why we would want to evaluate the life wheel.
Sure. Thank you. So I think one of the things that we want to be sure is that we set some ground rules and some expectations for everybody as we are using this. So when you are rating each area from 1 to 10, that's going to be 1 to 10 for you. So 1 would kind of be, I'm really not satisfied in this area. I feel like I have a lot of growth in this area. 10 would be, everything is amazing. Let's right off the bat say no one's ever going to have all of their areas at 10. That is an unrealistic expectation. That is not the point of what we are trying to look through and look for with the life wheel. But what we want you to do is get quiet and kind of determine for yourself, where is my level of satisfaction in each of these areas? It really is a diagnostic tool. So we want you to take some time to kind of look through and just assess, where am I in this? Where would I like to be and where would I like to go? While the wheel will never be completely in balance, we do want to look for areas where maybe we really aren't as satisfied or we really aren't in the place we want to be, because that will help us set intentions for how we can set goals, how we can care for ourselves, and how we can move ourselves into areas of more fulfillment. And fulfillment is such an important thing in life, but we also have to remember, how do we define fulfillment? You know, fulfillment doesn't have to be everything is perfect. Fulfillment can be, I have enough in this area and I feel fulfilled in it. So what we want to be sure you're doing is being true to yourself and where you feel you are in the moment. But we also want you to know this cannot be used as a weapon. So we do not want you to weaponize this tool against yourself. So do not fill it in and think, oh my goodness, that's only a 2. This is so terrible. I'm so terrible at this. No, this is a non-judgmental assessment to give you a little bit of a visual snapshot to help you set direction for yourself. So Tamara, do you want to talk really quickly about how we're going to fill this out specifically?
Yep. So in terms of the instructions now, as Kathy had mentioned, the core, the center of this is going to be your 1. And that is sort of the least satisfied you are in that particular pie wedge. Right now, I'm showing the example of spirituality. 10 would be the greatest measure. And we're going to show you 2 ways to fill this out. So for those of you who love your colored markers and pencils, you may be more interested in this first way that we fill out the wheel. If you're sort of more of a data person, you may appreciate the second way. So just give it a beat and we will give you a few minutes to fill out the categories. So stick with us. You'll continue then for the folks that like to shade yours in. You can see that for spirituality, I feel I filled this out for myself. I feel like things are going very well. Health and fitness, I'm a mid-range. Career is going fairly well. And then you can see so on and so forth. Relationships not looking so good. So all the single ladies in the house, I feel ya. The second way we can fill this out is by putting plot points on those same numbers. And if you were to string a line between them, you get a really interesting web design. And it also gives you a very quick diagnostic on sort of how rounded each of these areas are. So we're going to pause on this screen and I'm going to turn it over. Kathy, did you want to just say a couple words before we give folks a chance to fill out their wheels?
So I think probably what would be best, let's first give everybody maybe a minute or two to fill out your wheel. Now, we do want you to be thoughtful. So don't feel like you have to make a judgment about every area of your life in the next 90 seconds, right? So if you can, if you've got a really good gut feeling, feel free to kind of go into all the areas and fill them out. Or if you would like to just really get quiet for a minute and just fill out one or two areas for the purpose of how we're going to use the wheel, you can feel free to do that. But we're going to pause right now for about 90 seconds and just give you a couple of minutes to actually fill this out a little bit. And if for any reason, you don't have the wheel downloaded, you can, as Tamara said, put a circle and put some pie marks in place, and you can go ahead and spend some time. But we want this to be a working workshop because we actually want you to leave with some next steps and some things you can do. So I'm going to actually set a timer, and we're going to give you guys about 90 seconds to spend a little bit of time with this and start doing some initial evaluation.
Wonderful. Should I start the Jeopardy music? Do.
That would be amazing. Cue it up.
Oh, this is wonderful. And I'm so excited that this is a working workshop that everyone can fill this out and do and just visually see. One of the favorite things that I love about this whole approach is that visualization. I think for all of us who are creatives, visualizing it is so important.
Yeah.
So,
and for anyone that feels like this has to be even filled out perfectly, know that you can go back and change your dots or your shaded areas. So this is not something that has to be permanent for all time.
And hopefully it won't be permanent, that we will have growth areas and maybe areas where it does shrinks from time to time. And that can give us a little bit of a hint that maybe we need to do some work in that area. It's something that I believe you can do on a regular basis too. How often do you feel like someone should kind of do this diagnostic wheel? Is there?
We actually addressed that right at the end. So you're leading the witness. We will get to that.
I'm jumping ahead already, aren't I?
Fantastic. No, it's a great question.
And I did see a really good question in the chat about, could you write in the wheel why you feel you aren't doing well or great in that area? You absolutely could if it's helpful. But we're also going to talk in a few minutes about, once you fill it out, what you do with that. And during that reflection part afterwards, that could also be a time or a place where you might be able to more clearly define why you think you are doing the way you are doing in that area.
Yes. And I love the colors that you use. I think colors do help us give us a little bit more of a visualization too of the wheel and the areas you're doing. So it may be something when we're even done here, you may want to grab another download of the wheel and do it in colors as well and spend some time on it.
Another aspect, since you like colors, that I have also seen folks do is for the web version. I've seen folks come back with a different color pen 6 months and fill out the same thing. And so if it's done twice a year, they can see the areas that might be, for whatever reason, shrinking or growing. And so there's different ways also as a diagnostic tool for the web. Are we ready to move on?
We are. So what I'm going to do is I just want to, can you take it back really quick, Tamara? Just one. One thing that we did say though, and as you have a visualization in front of you, or as you get one, as you fill this out, while we're really clear that you never need to have all of the areas in the same spot, it's very unlikely that you'll spend much time there because there are different times, seasons, and phases in our lives when we have to give different levels of attention or support to different areas in our life. So while we don't expect it all to be even, at the same time, we really want to take a look at the areas that are low, because I want you to look at the one right now that's shaded and imagine to yourself if that was a tire on your car. And what if all 4 of your tires actually looked like that? So you could imagine it would be a pretty bumpy road going down the street if your tires were that far out of balance, right? And so what we want to do is look for the areas maybe where we have low satisfaction to help us set some intention so we can bring our lives into a little bit more of a smooth ride. So while the whole thing does not have to be even, you can see if you have some areas that are drastically different from others, it might just make your ride through life a little bumpier than it needs to be. So we're going to use that in order to help us create some goals and take some steps. So Tamara, if you don't mind going to the next one now. So the life wheel is to be used as a tool for transformation. And so what I would like you to think about right now as you're sitting with us, if there was one area in the wheel that is a lower area of satisfaction for you, or maybe an area where you're feeling some more stress, that's an area that we're going to want to focus on. And not because we necessarily need to fix it, but because what we want to do is bring intentionality and bring care and bring grace for ourselves into areas of our lives that maybe aren't exactly where we want them. So you will start with that area. And the first thing that we want you to do is to create some vision points. So ask yourself, what would be a really great possible outcome if I were to move up in this area 2 points, 3 points? You can determine for yourself how much of a move you think you need to make. And then what would that look like? And when you're creating vision points for yourself, what you want to do is write them in the present tense. And you want them to be specific enough that it would be positive movement in the right direction. So for example, if maybe you're only a 3 in health and wellness and you want to move up to a 5 or a 6, you might say for your vision points, I am exercising 3 days a week. I am making different choices about my food. I am taking some time to take care of my mental health, but you would, in very specific present tense language, create a vision of what you want to see. And so write it down. If you have some ideas right now, you can jot them down, but what would that look like for you once you have moved up the ladder? So first you want to start by creating your vision point. And this would be great. Kathleen, I was thinking you're going to be making vision boards soon.
Yes.
So if you have somebody who's here, right, creating that vision board in that area to move themselves up, what a great tool. What a great way to follow through with that. So that's one of the first things we want to do.
Yes. Bring this to the vision board
Bring it
event
with you.
on this Saturday. This would be great.
Yeah,
Yes,
for sure.
perfect.
The next thing that you want to do is once you have your vision, then we want to go into how do we set goals for ourselves. And goals, you've all, I'm sure, heard of SMART goals, but we're going to walk through it just in case you haven't. So when you are setting goals for yourselves, you want them to kind of tick 5 boxes. And the first is that they just need to be specific. You need to know where you're going. You need to know what you're doing, right? And so it's easy to kind of write fuzzy goals, but sometimes if we write fuzzy goals, we have a really hard time getting traction because we're not really sure where we're going. So the first thing is you want your goal to be specific. To go along with specific, you want it to be measurable because you want to be able to tell if you got there. So there's a difference between I want to be healthier and I want to exercise 4 days a week, right? That's specific and it's measurable. You can tell if you've made it or if you haven't made it. Or for example, if you have a different area, when I did my wheel at the beginning of the year, I really wanted to do some investments in some of the relationships I had. And so one of my goals was I want to have a meaningful conversation with each one of my children at least once every 2 weeks, right? So specific, measurable, right? The A for your goal is achievable. And here's why we want to write achievable goals. You get to set your goals for yourselves, and we want you to set them in a way you can create momentum and in a way you can have movement. Just like we don't want you using the life wheel as a weapon, we also don't want you using your goals as a weapon, right? Where you set a goal so fast, so high, so out there, and then all of a sudden, because you don't achieve it right away, now you turn that back in on yourself. We don't want that. You get to create these goals. And as coaches, one of the things we work with people is, how do you create goals in a way that set your direction and create momentum moving in the right direction? So we want a goal to be achievable. When we look at R, we also want it to be relevant. We want it to be aligned with who you are. We want it to be relevant to you. Sometimes it's really easy for us to write goals because it's what somebody else wants for us, or it's what we think the world wants for us, or we're trying to keep up with the Joneses with something, but we really want your goals to be relevant to who you are and who you have been created to be. We want them to be goals that bring your best self into the world, because what the world needs is you, uniquely created, thriving with the gifts you have been given. So we want your goals to be relevant to you. And then the last one is we want them to be time bound. So again, we want a deadline. Now, sometimes we start on a goal and we reach it faster, or things come up as we're working on it and we need to extend the timeline a little bit. That's okay. But we also want it to be time bound because we want it setting us in a direction to go. We kind of have a deadline of when we'd like to get there. And what we want it to do is to be motivating, but not crippling. So again, write your goals in a way that motivate you, but are reachable for you. Once you've got your goal, the next thing we want to do is assign meaning. This is where motivation comes in. I don't know if any of you have ever set goals and then you don't meet them and you don't meet them and you don't meet them. And anytime we've got people who are setting goals and they're not meeting them repeatedly, number one, we want to be sure that the goal is written correctly, but two, why is that goal meaningful? Because if you're writing a goal for a reason that isn't meaningful to you, sometimes it's really hard to get motivation. So when you're assigning meaning in the area, so I want to move from a 3 to a 5 in the area of relationships with my kids, right? The meaning is it creates a bond within my family. It lets my kids know I love them, right? There is a big meaning for that with me. And we can find meaning in our careers, in our spiritual walks, in the way we contribute to society, in our health, in our wellness, in all these areas. So the questions you're going to ask yourself for meaning is, why do I want to do this? Why do I want to do it now? Because sometimes a time for a goal is now. And then ask yourself, how am I going to feel when I get there? Sometimes that's the biggest thing, is how will I feel once I've been able to achieve this? What will that do for my joy, my ability to thrive, my feeling of coming alive? And once we have those big things, the last thing we do is take a first step. So what is the first step in your goal? So it could be schedule that first phone call. It could be go to that first workout. If you want to move up in your health, it could be sign up for the fitness mentorship, right? That's one.
Sign up for the speed dating event.
Right. Go to a speed dating event if you're in a relationship. But what is one thing you can do? Because steps build, and any step, no matter how large or how small, is still movement in the right direction. And that's what we want you to do, is one step at a time and then see what unfolds. And as we continue to use the wheel and we move in that direction, we'll find that we end up with greater joy, greater fulfillment, greater contentment, greater balance. All of those things come as we just start faithfully moving intentionally, graciously, and with what is the word I'm looking for, but just with intention in the areas that we want. So as you fill out your wheel, pick 2 or 3 areas that maybe you'd like to move a point or two, and then walk them through these steps. And once you do that, now you've got a roadmap created for yourself to start gaining momentum in any area that you would like to see growth in this year. So Tamara, did I miss anything? Does that sound about right?
You didn't miss anything, but I did. And I'd like to just go back a slide briefly because Nancy asked a question in the chat that reminded me about it, which
Great.
let me go back. So Nancy had asked about the category of contribution. So one word about each of these is answer these categories in the way that makes sense for you. So for example, for me, for relationships, if I was in a point where I had some maybe tension with a family member, or for example, I felt like I didn't have enough substance in my friendships with my girlfriends that I wanted to deepen. However you want to define those categories. For me, contribution looks like, where am I spending some of my time, or am I feeding the next generation? What do I want my legacy to be? So just a word about the categories, please define them how it makes sense to you to define them. Moving just to close this session out so that we can get to a formal Q&A period. We know that priorities shift and they change over time. So I had alluded to this a couple slides back, but we find this to be a useful tool to do every 6 to 12 months. It's personally something that I started doing every January, just to kind of see, how is my year starting? What do I want to focus on and look forward to for the year ahead? For me, I am focused on relationships and personal health. So those are two categories for me that I am trying to make some headway in. Just a reminder what Kathy had referenced in terms of a balanced wheel is not necessarily all categories at a 10. That is a mythical unicorn that does not exist. So use your own scale. And, you know, as we were looking, figure out what feels reasonable to you. Do you just want to move from a 3 to a 6 or 7? Is that success for you? That is huge progress already. And finally, just kind of closing the loop to say that making progress towards your personal goals helps put in motion and helps put you on this path towards greater fulfillment and satisfaction. And we hope ultimately joy. Kathy and I are in sort of this area, this business, because we love to see women thrive. And we want you to thrive. And we hope that this tool has been, if you haven't seen it before, come across it before, something that is a helpful tool for you in your own life. Kathy, is there anything else you would like to add before we go to Q&A?
I think the only thing I would like to add is, if you are moving yourself forward in an area, there might be different ways, because sometimes things happen in life where we can't change the circumstance. And so maybe we've got a low number in an area because circumstances around us are such that, you know, we're dealing with some struggle or some issue, whether it's a health issue, a family issue, a career issue, and maybe the circumstance is out of our control, but we may still be able to move our level of fulfillment up by really working on our mindset, our tools to keep our own personal well-being in check despite the circumstances. So anytime you're moving up and you're making a goal, it could be a goal in a skill you need to learn. It could be a goal in a very specific thing you want to achieve, or it could also be just moving into how you are thinking about, interacting with, and responding to maybe circumstances that are out of your control. So just so you know, it doesn't always have to be my circumstances have to be really good for me to be at an 8, but it may be there are some strategies, some ways of releasing, some ways of trusting, some ways of turning things over maybe to God, to be able to have a higher level of satisfaction despite maybe what our circumstances are around any given area. So I want you to give yourselves leeway as you are setting goals and as you are trying to move forward. Is it an action or is it an attitude? What is it that I want to work on in this area?
Wonderful.
Wow, this is wonderful. Absolutely fabulous. I don't know about anyone out there, but I'm sure learning a lot tonight about some steps that some practical steps that we can take and some important steps. I love that you keep emphasizing the importance of being intentional and taking that first step. Again, I think sometimes we just have to begin. I often say there's over 460 some references in the Bible to the word go and 62 to the word stay. God's a forward moving God.
Mhm.
He wants us to move our wheels forward and to get on that road and not let it be a bumpy road. And so I love how this is such a practical tool in us, again, seeing visually those areas in which we need to improve. Well, it's time for us to hear from everybody that's been watching. I know they must have a million questions for you. So I'm going to bring Laura Woodworth in. Thank you, Laura, so much for coming in tonight in our chat room with us tonight. I know that you have got several questions there from people who've been watching. So what's our first one tonight that you could share for Kathy and Tamara tonight?
Actually, several of them have been covered already, but it would be great to hear if we could have, well, here's one question. We started out by talking about curiosity. How would you define curiosity as far as it relates to the life wheel?
I think both of us might answer it slightly different. I think for me, being more curious about myself. One of the things that Kathy and I had mentioned in the short video snippet that we had submitted about what this workshop was going to be is that often as women, we tend to put ourselves second, third, fourth to family, career, other responsibilities. And I don't think it's selfish to look for opportunities to help us enhance our own life. It helps us feel like we are thriving and actually gives us more ability to care for the people and the things around us. And so for me, I would say being curious about my own life and not making assumptions that I am, when we live in our head, I think we make some preconceived judgments, but the minute you start to put things down, Julia Cameron is famous for talking about the morning pages and just that purging and getting things down. Once you start to visualize this and see something, why do I feel like I'm a 3 in relationships? Why do I feel like my career is at a such and such? And as Kathy so eloquently put it, it's not about judging or kind of beating ourselves up about being a certain number, but asking those questions of just, I think if you approach it with that childlike curiosity, why do I feel that way? What could help me move one step forward? Kathy, I don't know how you would answer that.
It's interesting that what came to mind for me is I had posted something just last week and now it just came to me is I said, be more curious than afraid. And I think sometimes when we are moving into the unknown, when an unforeseen circumstance comes up, when we are trying to grow or move into new spaces, it's very easy for us to have thoughts that are fearful or that are anxious. And we've been told we haven't been given a spirit of fear, right? But it's so easy for us to be afraid or to be anxious. And making that small shift with curiosity is if a situation is new, if a situation's unknown, if it looks like it's going to be difficult, how does our life change if we're more curious than afraid? So if the question we ask ourselves is, well, what if instead of spinning ourselves into all of these catastrophic, I am a very gifted catastrophic thinker. I am very like I can be ready for any catastrophe. But what if instead we'd be curious? What can I bring to this situation? What is this situation going to bring to me? And if we approach things with more curiosity than fear or angst, I think it makes a very big difference in even just how we experience things that come across our path that maybe were unexpected, or, the ability to go after a goal if I'm curious about how it's going to unfold versus if I'm afraid I'm going to fail.
Oh, that's so good. I love that.
That's what I think about with curiosity.
I love that. Yes.
Very
So
good.
good. So good.
It's very good. And Nancy is asking a question. How do you deal with perfectionists?
Sitting some nerves tonight.
Kathy, do
I had that answer, I could retire.
I know.
I think what it it is, this is for me, and then Tamara, I'll let you answer it. And Kathleen, I'd be curious what you think about this as well. But I think when it comes to perfectionism, one of the things we have to look at is, where is that perfectionism coming from? And perfect according to who, right, is another thing that sometimes I will ask myself, well, perfect according to who, and often people that have perfectionist tendencies that I've seen are very, very high achievers. And I have a couple of clients where I'm like, you realize that you at 50% speed is a lot of people at 100% speed, right? And so how do we, it doesn't mean we don't strive for quality in what we do, but what we want to do is be sure that the perfectness is really often an illusion, right? And so when it stays out there, we can never quite reach it, never quite reach it, never quite reach it. And we look at that as like a flaw on ourselves, where it's not. We are enough the way we are.
Amen, sister.
We are. And so being able to be gentle with yourself, and it doesn't mean that you don't try to do your best, but it's being able to look around and be like, hey, you know what? I'm enough where I'm at, and I can continue to learn and grow always. But sometimes, it's okay. It's okay to just be enough. We are enough.
Yeah. So good. So good.
Very good.
For any folks that are familiar with the Enneagram language, both Kathy and I do coaching around Enneagram, and I identify as a 2 who really leaned into a 1 wing for most of my 20s and 30s. And I think one of the things that has helped me is redefining what success is, and learning that success is not perfectionism. And that has redefining that. And that's Kathy had introduced me to this amazing coaching work that had a whole series around success and essentially redefining it. And so it's helped me even in exercises like this of, I'm not trying to attain perfection. I'm trying to attain being more satisfied in areas of my life. And if there's areas that are not working for me, there are measurable steps that I can take to get there.
Yes, so good. And I think sometimes trying to be a perfectionist means that we've got something in our background that's made us that way. So it's examining what that is in our background and then dealing with that and coming, and the life wheel will do that for us. And so will our relationship with who we are in God and the identity He tells us that we are, and that we don't have to be perfect all the time, and that's part of God's grace and forgiveness that He allows us to grab a hold of, and ask for our forgiveness of ourselves sometimes that we need to do. Sometimes we have to ask forgiveness of ourselves first before we can move forward. So it's good stuff.
Very
Laura,
good.
next
we
one.
We have another question, and this is referring to the actual categories in the life wheel. Does leadership refer to us as a leader, or the leaders we have above it, or however we take it?
I would say, with any of this, it can always be however you take it. But I think our intention is, where are you in your leadership abilities? Where are you leading? How do you feel about your role as a leader? And remember, there's lots of different ways to lead. And there's a lot of different places that we can lead. It doesn't have to mean you're the CEO of the company in order to lead, right? So where do we lead with our lives, and how do we feel about our ability to do that is how I would take that when I saw that. Because again, how I lead with my life is a place I might have a little more control. I'm going to have very little control over how other people lead. That would be an attitude adjustment for me, right? But if I'm looking at my own leadership skills and the way I lean into being a leader whenever there's an opportunity for me, that's what I would probably look at that as personally.
It's good.
Very good. And then also in the contribution section, can you just explain that a little bit further?
Yeah, I think it's going to be different for both of us. For me, I'm looking at what are ways that I can sow seeds into others around me. And I think it can be big and small ways. I do mentoring at Disney. And so that's something that right now is giving me a degree of satisfaction, feeling like I'm helping the next generation of young working professionals coming up. There have been periods in my life where I have given time to church projects and church initiatives, and that has been satisfying because I feel like I'm contributing to my church community. Other times it's just regular community. Sometimes it's just family based. So for me, I define it different ways in different periods of my life, but I know when I'm not doing it.
Yeah, and I think when we came up with those categories too, leadership and contribution, we knew they were going to be pretty broad. And so leadership to me is there's lots of skills within being a leader, and leader has to do with being an influencer. And so where are those particular areas within the leadership dynamics of a leader that maybe you need to work on? Is it your anger? Is it your ability to communicate well? So there are lots of aspects within a leadership position that you could address. And same thing with contributions. I think with contributions, you can be all over the place, whether it be contributing your time or your talent, or there's just different places that you can contribute. And so they are broad areas. Yeah, it's a good question.
I'm giggling because I saw the question that came up in the actual Q&A. What areas from the wheel do you find the easiest to reach your goals and the most challenging? I think that's going to be completely individual, because for me, health is how I would define how I feel healthy and well. Like we look at Danica, who health and wellness is her area of expertise. So for her, that probably would not be a category that would be difficult. But for me, that area and relationships in terms of romantic relationships tend to be consistently, at least the last few years, very difficult for me personally. So it's hard for me to make headway. Kathy,
we're all different, isn't it? Aren't we? And I love that. God's made us all different.
Absolutely.
We're not perfect, and that's okay.
But that's why we have a community, right? Everybody brings their strengths to it differently.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. I know.